Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. The latest as it pertains to the 8-woman tournament that Lou DiBella has been trying to put together. Shernika Johnson will defend her title against her new mandatory, Nina Hughes, before year's end. These fights include 4 of the 8 women in the tournament I envisioned, and fits the tournament format for unifying. All the women remain committed to unifying, though there is not presently a media partner for the tournament. Many outlets have passed. Women's boxing has few paying supporters and is not thriving despite assertions to the contrary. I closed the deal today for the live telecast of Heroes on the Hudson later on this month on the 23rd, headlined by the Yoshida vs. Metcalf rematch. Fight by fight, I am committed to this tournament. The women deserve it. I am working with Dina Thorsland's people and Amanda Gaye to have their next fights promoted as tournament fights. This would create a Final Four that some platform will pay for, God willing. Women in boxing need media outlets to champion and their fights. They are garnering very little platform support and money, and it's getting worse. We will unify. 118.
Lou DiBella means well, but he's got his limitations. This tournament format would be a lot easier to put together if, say, a matchroom fighter were involved, or perhaps a most valuable promotions fighter were involved. A promotional outfit that already has a major broadcast deal and a budget to do fights.
Tournaments are already hard to put together in the sport of boxing. A tournament format. I remember in the second season of the World Boxing Super Series, they were experiencing some issues, and that was with the men.
And they had problems.
Tournament format is better suited for the amateurs than the pros. In pro boxing, the tournament format can be a logistics nightmare if fighters get injured,
Things get postponed.
financial issues. I remember in the second season of the World Boxing Super Series, they were having those same problems. The problem that Lou DiBella is facing trying to put together this 8-woman tournament, it seems he's struggling to find someone to get behind it financially. In pro boxing, it's hard to do that without ticket sellers. That's the cold, hard truth. Without fighters that generate the money.
You want somebody to pour it in, but how are they supposed to get it back?
That's an issue. I'll tell you that every single fight, most every single fight you can make involving these 8 women would be an action fight and a crowd-pleasing fight. The issue is, none of these women sell tickets in America. They ain't draws. Without being draws, they're not gonna draw investors. This is an international tournament featuring international fighters from all around the world. Australia, Denmark, Canada.
The United Kingdom, the United States.
They're just not well known, and it's unfortunate. He mentioned Shernika Johnson, newly crowned WBA bantamweight champion Shernika Johnson, that hasn't fought since she pried the belt away from Nina Hughes.
That was earlier this year in May.
Now, if their rematch is happening on the undercard of Metcalf versus Yoshida 2, the silver lining is, at least it didn't take a year and a day. At least the year didn't pass before Nina got another crack at the apple, because at her age, time is a luxury she doesn't have.
It'll be on neutral ground this time, neutral terrain. The first time they fought, it was in Shernika's neck of the woods. It was in Australia, where she's based out of. This time, it'll be in America, so neither fighter will have home field advantage.
Fighting the fight that she fought, Shernika wins the fight. She's got a bit of size. She's certainly got youth over Nina Hughes.
And she's malleable. She doesn't have to fight Nina mid-range to inside. She can use her height and use her length to box her up.
Alternate from pushing her back mid-range to inside to making her work for her meal mid-range to outside on her toes. That's one of Shernika Johnson's strengths, that she has more than one way of fighting a fight. This rematch is coming to us ahead of schedule because I remember hearing immediately after their initial meeting that Shernika would have to fight former champion Jamie Mitchell first, then Nina Hughes again. In some ways, it's a good thing that she's able to get her mandatory challenger out of the way before this year is out, so that next year she can go straight into unification matches.
Presumably with the winner of Yoshida versus Metcalf 2, whoever it is, since they're boxing on the same show, that sets that up.
And that's where we are with this proposed 8-woman tournament. Things are less than ideal, but they are moving along. There is some progress, some effort to bring unification matches to 118 pounds, one way or another. Men's junior middleweight news, the WBO have now officially granted a 10-day extension for Terence Crawford versus Sebastian Fundora negotiations. The fight was ordered as Fundora has WBC and WBO Super Welterweight world titles, while Crawford has the WBA Super Welterweight world title and the WBO interim title.
We know that Terence Crawford has his heart set on a Canelo Alvarez fight. Canelo, who's rumored to be fighting in Japan before this year is out.
The rumor is that Canelo's actually over there right now, and an official announcement is imminent that he will be boxing on the same show as Naoya Inoue's fight with Sam Goodman.
Right?
I understood Terence Crawford's desire to aim for the stars, go after the big fish, go after Canelo Alvarez. I mean, I get why he would want to do that from a legacy perspective, a financial perspective.
I get it.
But the Canelo Alvarez fight was never a guarantee, and Canelo's not going to make any alterations to his schedule and in what amount of time he wants to get things done for Terence Crawford or Turki El Sheikh or anybody. Whereas this fight with Sebastian Fundora, it's time sensitive. Decisions need to be made now. Personally, I would much rather see him stay at junior middleweight now that he's made his junior middleweight debut. And we saw what he looked like with Israel Madrimov. And he looked less than spectacular. He looked less than perfect, whether it was age or just ring rust.
I think he should stay at 154. I think 168 is too high a mountain to climb.
Where before I was a proponent of a Crawford versus Canelo Alvarez fight, now I'm convinced Canelo's too big, too strong. Canelo knocks him out.
That's what I think.
I would rather see him stay there at 154 and unify that division, because in a matter of two fights, two fights, he could become a 3-time undisputed champion. And that's monumental in and of itself. Unprecedented. There are very few fighters that become undisputed champions. Even fewer that do it twice.
That's a short list.
Even fewer that do it 3 times. I mean, has that ever happened? I know it hasn't happened in the 4-belt era, but has that ever even happened in an era before it? A 3-time undisputed champion?
I don't know.
In just 2 fights, Terence Crawford can make that history if he stays there, if he stays at 154 and sees this through, sees this out. Team Fundora are now saying that their focus is the Crawford fight. It doesn't look like they're getting anywhere with that Errol Spence Jr. fight. They might have wanted it before, but they don't seem to want it now.
What changed their mind?
Could be any number of things. What stands out is the money. That if you do the Crawford fight, you know who's paying for it. Turkey's paying for it, and he'll pay you well. Whereas with Errol, it's a game of chance. It's a roll of the dice. That if you build this as a pay-per-view, you might get to make some money. With Turkey, you know you will.
Crawford.
In tandem with how Terence looked in his last fight, Terence looked less than spectacular with Israel Madrimov, and whether it was just ring rust from having not fought in a year, or Father Time finally catching up to Terence, in the mind of Team Fundora, now is the time to strike. Now is the right time to fight him. That if he's starting to look old and he's starting to slow down,
Crawford.
Now's the time to fight him. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's what they're thinking.
Crawford.
Maybe that's what changed their mind. That they're now focused on Crawford and not Errol.
Crawford.
10-day extension that they have been granted gives them a little bit more time to make the numbers work, come to an agreement, and get the ball rolling. 10-day extension and the subsequent deadline at minimum tells us that the WBO wants answers, and they want answers in a timely fashion. They're not going to leave this in limbo.
Sweep it under the rug.
They say a bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush. And if you're Terence Crawford, you don't know that you're going to get a shot at Canelo. You don't know that you'll be able to get him in the ring. But with this, you know that you're either going to get Sebastian in the ring or you're going to get his belt.
You have a lot of money behind you now. More than Sebastian Fundora makes. That is influence.
More than the winner of Bakram Murtazaliev versus Tim Kazoo makes.
That's leverage.
In 2 fights, just 2 fights, you can make history in a way that no other fighter today is making history. Don't begrudge that Terence Crawford in the twilight years of his career might have been looking for the biggest fish, the biggest payday. I understand that mindset, but like I said, fighting Canelo, as ambitious as that was, it was always a pipe dream. It was never a guarantee.
Fight Sebaceous.
Mean Sebastian. Fight Sebastian. Fight Sebastian, then target the winner of Zoo versus Murtazaliev and retire on that.
That's what I would prefer to see. That's what I would prefer to see as a boxing fan.
And that's not to say that a Sebastian Fundora fight is going to be a walk in the park. I don't think it's going to be a walk in the park. It's an awkward assignment for anybody, let alone an older fighter who's only one fight into his junior middleweight campaign.
It ain't easy.
It ain't gonna be, but I think Terence has enough left that he can do it. If you make the fight within the next 12 months, you're gonna get a sharper Terence Crawford than you saw in August.
Because he had a fight, he got a chance to shake the cobwebs off.
His timing, his speed, his sharpness, it'll all be back. He'll be firing on all cylinders. I would much rather see Terence focus on this than continue to pursue Canelo.
2 fights, man. 2 fights away from a 3-time undisputed champion.
It's hard enough to go undisputed once. It's hard enough, let alone twice, but 3 times. Ain't nobody topping that.
I would rather see Terence do that.
Men's Cruiserweight news. Noel Mikaelian versus Ryan Rozicki. WBC Cruiserweight title fight heads to an October 4th purse bid.
If the matter isn't settled by the time that this video is uploaded, what this accents is that the WBC is sticking to their guns, sticking to their order, and moving this process along.
A fight scheduled for last week is now headed to the auction block. The ring has confirmed that the snake-bit Noel Mikaelian, Ryan Rozicki, WBC Cruiserweight title fight is back on purse bid status. The two were due to meet on September 28th on a Don King promotion show in Casino Miami Jai Alai in Miami, Florida. No reason was given for the show's cancellation. Whatever the case, it was enough for King, Mikaelian's promoter, to be declared in default of his original agreement. Rozicki is promoted by Daniel Otter's Three Lions Promotions.
They're putting the reigning champion, they're putting Noel Mikaelian on the spot.
The fallout marked the 4th time that the fight has failed to stick to a scheduled date. There were issues dating back to a cut suffered by Mikaelian in training camp, which killed plans for their June 7th meeting. An agreement was made to reschedule in lieu of a new opponent sought by Rozicki. 3 postponements later, the patience of Rozicki's team was long exhausted. We are now hopeful to win the purse bid and Ryan to become the WBC World Champion, Otter told the Ring. Mikaelian, rated number 2, was due to make his first title defense. The 33-year-old Armenian won the belt in a 3rd-round knockout of former titleist, former champion Lunga Makabu last November 4th in his adopted Miami hometown. He remains the only active titleist on King's current promotional roster.
Noel is all he really has.
Of any value, I should say. Rozicki will enter his 2nd career title fight, whether in the United States or on home soil. The 29-year-old from Ontario, Canada, has won 7 in a row since an October 2021 defeat to Oscar Rivas. Their fiercely contested battle sparked the inaugural WBC Bridgerweight title fight. Rozicki was due to fight outside of Canada for the first time in his career. His team's intention is to now keep the fight north of the border.
They want home field advantage.
The article states that a reason wasn't given for the cancellation, but according to Ryan Rozicki, the reason the show was canceled was because Don King had fell ill.
He was sick.
Which is corroborated by boxing insider Rick Glacier, who said, contrary to rumors floating around, Don King is not on his deathbed. Don is now 93 years old, and he did have a hospital stay of 10 days, is now home recovering nicely, and is talking like Don always talks. Don sends his best to all the boxing fans. So while he's not on his deathbed, he was in a hospital bed for at least 10 days. And that's said to be why the show was canceled.
It's not a good enough reason, though.
Not to be insensitive, but I don't think to the WBC that's a valid reason to delay satisfying the mandatory, that Noel is on the hook one way or another, and whether it's Don King at the helm of promotions or Three Lions at the helm of promotions, this fight needs to happen.
Three Lions wants home field advantage.
For that to happen, they need to beat out Don at the purse bid, unless Don can persuade them to come to America by spicing up the deal, maybe offering up more money before the purse bid gets here. The purse bid is only about 3 days away.
Doesn't give him a lot of time.
But at this time, I think Ryan is just fed up. He's angry, he wants his title shot, he wants his opportunity, and he might not want to accept anything from Don.
Wasting his time.
Team Rozicki might want to just stick to their guns, try to win the purse bid, bring the fight to Canada to give Ryan as many advantages as possible so he can win that title. Noel Mikaelian is the only Cruiserweight champion that isn't tied to Riyadh Season, Turkey El Al Sheikh shows. We know that Zerto and Chris Billum-Smith, they're about to fight each other. They're about to unify as part of a Riyadh Season show.
Jai Opataya, he's fighting on a Riyadh Season show too.
I think this is going to be his third or fourth appearance on a Riyadh Season show, I think. As it pertains to Jai, the IBF ruled on Opataya versus Macy, saying the IBF Cruiserweight champion Jai Opataya has received approval for an exception to fight Jack Macy in a voluntary title defense on October 12th in Saudi Arabia. But the Opataya versus Macy winner must face the mandatory Hussein Sankara by January 20th of next year.
He's on the hook.
The IBF always seems to be riding this guy's ass.
They do. Let's not get away from the point.
The way it looks, if Rozicki versus Mikaelian happens before this year is out, the winner of that fight can then maybe move on to face the winner of Ramirez versus Billum-Smith. That if Jai is all tied up with a mandatory at the beginning of next year, those champions can unify. Whoever wins Rozicki versus Mikaelian and whoever wins Ramirez versus Billum-Smith.
Maybe.
There does seem to be a separate report, separate rumor, that Turkey El Al Sheikh is pulling strings behind the scenes to get Jai that fight. That if he takes care of business with Jack Macy, he wants him to fight the winner of Billum-Smith versus Ramirez. The problem is, he's got a mandatory.
They're always sticking mandatories up this guy's
It
ass.
seems that way. The IBF was hounding Jai Opataya to fight his mandatory at the end of last year. Now they're doing the exact same thing towards the end of this one. They're always riding this guy's ass. That's the potential stumbling block, that he has a mandatory in the queue. Now, they could always pay him to step aside. They could always pay him to go away.
They could.
But that's the lay of the land. That's what's going on. I just figure that if they get this Rozicki-Mikaelian fight done before this year is out, the winner of that fight, whoever it is, go right into negotiations with the winner of Billum-Smith versus Ramirez.
Really glad that His Excellency has taken an interest in the Cruiserweight division and is now helping to make things happen there. I can only hope that he takes the same interest in some other divisions that need a kick in the ass.
A helping hand to make things happen.
So we'll see what happens.